But if you're thinking of leaning into a long-term relationship, maybe having an agency around to do, part of your team, really, then who are we working with? What are the individuals? What's their personality? Like, how do they think of things? So that we thought was an interesting topic because, we've had some really successful long-term partnerships with accounts. And I think part of that is how we think about, linking up customers with strategists, with account leads, and how that whole works. We'll talk about that. All right, Wing It Podcast, episode 98. Who do we have?
Kevin Butler.
Michael Turksani. All right. This is the last one in this studio.
In
this studio. And then we move. Yeah. In fact, there was a painting that you used to be able to see behind you, but we've already packed it up. So we're changing, we're moving. We're going to have a different location, a different setup for the podcast that we're going to do as well. So hopefully it's reboots the visuals for anybody that actually watches the clips. And
so basically every clip of podcast we have is now going to be time-stamped around pre-move and post-move.
Yeah, it's definitely going to look a lot different. So, and frankly, the original podcast room looked almost identical to this room because I think it had a red wall. Pretty much was the same, just slightly smaller.
So I think, is this the third or the fourth podcast room?
Well, this was the second original podcast room, and then we moved it we had it in the boardroom for a bit, and we had it in my office for a bit.
It's been everywhere.
Yeah. So, but that's cool. So after this, we're going to box up all the stuff and move on. But until then, we're gonna continue with our content strategy. This is part of our content strategy.
Content strategy doesn't care where we're shooting this.
Nope.
So we're talking about fit around people at the client side with people at the agency side.
Yeah, we're talking about, so we wanted to explore, when you're thinking about hiring an agency beyond, a project, I got to get a project done, hey, I may need a website's a very big deal, but so maybe that one as well, you'd want to have what we're going to talk about today as an important element. But, we do a lot of projects that I think the whole fit factor personality of an account lead strategist is probably not really a big deciding factor. Mm-hmm. But if you're thinking of leaning into a long-term relationship, maybe having an agency around to do, part of your team, really, then who are we working with? What are the individuals? What's their personality? Like, how do they think of things? So that we thought was an interesting topic because, we've had some really successful long-term partnerships with accounts. And I think part of that is how we think about, linking up customers with strategists, with account leads, and how that whole works. We'll talk about that. And then, maybe a little bit around what happens when you need to change that? Like what happens if you ever go through a situation, which I know a lot of clients have had, where they have to change account leads. So we thought that was a little bit of a change from marketing tactics and AI and that kind of flavor to, look, what are we trying to do? We're trying to find companies that want to work with us over a long-term period of time, right? They themselves recognize that they want a marketing vendor that's going to be part of their team. It's going to work with them, augment skill sets. But, we're not talking about a 3-month engagement. We're talking about people that would love to have a partner like us to help them grow their business for years to come.
In my mind, when a client is looking for an agency, there's two factors, and I think often only one of the factors is really considered when evaluating an agency is, can this agency and their people deliver on the things that we need? It's video production, it's content creation, it's demand gen capabilities, things like that. And that's important. But the other part is, can we work with this agency, even on a relatively short-term basis, call it 1 or 2 quarters? Do we feel like these are the right people? Do they have the right processes for how our organization needs to work? But probably the most important one is, do we like and trust the person that we're going to be dealing with on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you meet some of the team, sometimes you meet all of the team, but really there's that one crucial interface, whether it's like an account manager, whether it's a lead strategist. Do you actually like that person? Do they understand your business? Can you see yourself on a call with them 2-3 hours a week indefinitely? Right? And I think that's such a huge thing that doesn't always get asked. And then on the agency side is when you're also going through these pitches and then you start working with an organization, are you aligning the right kinds of resources with that agency or with that client?
Mm-hmm.
That's really important for the agency to think about too. So let me stop there because there's a lot that we can get through, but maybe we can talk a little bit your take on the client actually making sure they're asking themselves the question, do we like the people on the other end of this meeting? Do we think we can actually work with them on a long-term basis?
Yeah, I think we've definitely had clients that, where you're going to be entering in a sizable engagement, and they're asking, who are we working with? How many times has there been the bait and switch that you hear about from agencies, right? Heavy hitters come in as the pitch, and then you get relegated to the juniors to run the show, right? So it's definitely something that we've seen, and people I think are more aware of when they're getting into a long-term engagement,
definitely,
or a sizable engagement. They're a little more weary of that. I think on what a client should really, why is it important? I think maybe is the factor is that we talked a little bit about this before the podcast, that, if you were a highly creative individual, right? And you might just be, you might be running all kinds of automated programs, or you might be deploying demand gen campaigns, or you might be getting certain data services from an agency, right? So it's like not even creative type work necessarily fully, but you are a creative person, right? So your conversations tend to skew to the big picture, hey, how could we think outside the box? I've got this idea of messaging or visuals. And then you're paired up with somebody that's highly analytical, and you're thinking, well, you're running predominantly demand gen campaigns. So yeah, there's landing pages, there's visuals, but like to the degree that the bulk of what you're getting from us is not necessarily highly creative work, but you are that type of person, then there's going to be a mismatch there. You're going to have somebody that is bringing numbers, bringing stats, talking to you about, analytics, or they're a very analytical person, so they're skewing in that direction. So, I think that's partly why this is so important. If you have certain individuals that are the leads on your team looking for that fit factor, that's ultimately why it's important. Now, beyond, hey, who would I be working with? The agency doesn't have unlimited people, right? So what else can you look for? Well, we would recommend, of your strategist leadership team, probably a lot of the strategists are part of the leadership team. How long have they been there? Mm-hmm. Are these short tenured individuals that, likely if you had a changeover couldn't really step in and be, or are these like 6, 7, 8 year people that, yeah, you know what, I can step in for a period of time and or permanently if needed. What's the tenor of your account team?
Yep.
So yeah, the director of accounts, the person that's leading accounts, or the manager of accounts, they've been here for 7 years. And then the people underneath them, multi-year, it starts to feel like, okay, I'm not with somebody that,
flash in the pan.
Yeah, flash in the pan, or there's layers that can step in if needed, right? So again, it sort of ebbs and flows. And I think is it unrealistic for a customer that's spending not a lot of money to sit there and hum and haw over who the person is that's going to, I think there's a level where it's like, as the engagements become larger and they become more meaningful to the customer and to the agency, that's super important to get right.
Yeah, and I think you earn that too, right? You get to know one another, you build upon that, etc. Just stepping back, we didn't mention this before, but it's worth calling out now, is in my mind, the strongest client agency partnerships are the ones where they're usually initiated by the client in terms of a search. And what they do is they look at their core competencies and skill sets, and they say, let's not go get an agency that can do those things that we already have internally. Mm-hmm. Let's look at from a skill set capability and say, what does an agency bring that we don't have strength in? And then you're kind of you're covering more of the spectrum of marketing capabilities as a whole. And then there's the sort of more personable or like characteristics that you're trying to match to make sure that you've got the right people. So I think that part's crucial too. And then you're absolutely right. I think you have to, on the agency side, make sure you're aligning your resources that will best work with that organization and those particular people that they'll be working with closely in terms of bringing the right kind of way of thinking to sort of build upon that, right? To create more together, and there's just more value, more cohesion, and it just makes more sense. It's a more seamless experience. Sometimes I think you can look at us and assess the situation and say, you know what, they probably need someone who will go in and challenge a bit more.
Mm-hmm.
And to a degree, that's healthy, right? And in other cases, yeah, we really need to match their analytical thinking with someone analytical equally on our side, with maybe a bit of different experiences so that there's nice collaboration as a whole.
Yeah. Yeah. Or, somebody, and so I think when you look at the role of the agency is that it, in all cases, it's really important that those individuals are, as much as the customer may want us to feel like part of the long-term equation, that those individuals also feel that way and are acting that way. We're not just order takers getting something done.
Yeah.
Like, I'm invested in your success. I want to see this work out for us as a team, right? And no vendor has every answer. Like, there's not going to be a scenario where like there's never a problem. I think to the extent that a lot of these capabilities are commoditized, and let's actually call a spade a spade. I don't think any one of us is sitting here saying, hey, you know what, we can do things that nobody else can do. Like, I think these are commoditized services. I think the way in which partially one of the ways that you differentiate is through your engagement model, through your account and strategy model. The fact that we've got an account lead and a strategist paired, that there's an overlay of multiple levels around that account process, so that, when you do have a changeover, which is going to happen, or you do have a problem, which is going to happen, what's the biggest part that the agency can do is, well, we're gonna make it as seamless as possible. But that individual has to be, I feel like I'm part of your team. I'm not just the vendor.
I was just going to say, I think I totally agree. The agency, it's on them to make sure that they clearly demonstrate through their actions, through their engagements, even through their energy, that they're into this account.
Yeah.
They're committed to it. You demonstrate in your actions it's going perhaps a little bit above and beyond, but really making sure each one of those meetings that you're in with your client, that you're crushing. Like, you've got to be fully engaged, prepared, proactively bringing things to the table, new ideas. You should definitely be asking lots of questions early on, and just showing that you care, you're fundamentally invested in making sure this is a success. And in some cases, it might come more naturally because, hey, maybe you really like that vertical or industry your client's in. But in other cases, I think like the energy part can't be understated. Like, you've got to come and bring and just create a really positive meeting with your client, and that'll show. Like, if you're not into it, you're not into it, and that's, most people can tell.
Yeah, and I think that when you have a sense of overall team, like, you're still a vendor. You are a vendor, so I don't want to say you're still a vendor or just a vendor. You're part of the equation, but you are expected to bring a level of capability, and likely better than if we were to be hiring this internally, right? That's why they're selecting a vendor. So there's a level of professionalism. There's a level of, you're not gonna, not have your crap together in a meeting. You're gonna have that. Whereas like the internals, you can kind of, okay, fine. You're sometimes you're not all there. Whereas the agency, they pretty much need to be on all the time. But
you're a hired gun. That's absolutely right.
Yeah, you're a hired gun. And you want, I think, but you do want to have that full sense of team. So, we also talked about, well, yeah, it's commoditized, but are you looking for someone to just rifle shot orders to, rifle shot demands to, make it happen? Or are you looking for this individual to be part of your team and so there's a real difference there. And we've certainly seen accounts. I hope this is changing in the economy going forward, as we've talked about, where, we've been in accounts where like they don't really value that. They're not there to have, hey, we're a part of a team. You know, you're here to do what we need you to do, and that's kind of the extent of it.
Yeah, as it relates to how clients approach and treat vendors, I do think it's changing for two reasons. One, fundamentally with the scrutiny and pressure on budgets, now clients can't afford to get this wrong. So they need to leverage and make sure it works with the hired gun or the agency that they've gone and brought in. So I think that's part one. And I think part two is it's up to the agency to earn and command that respect. And you're not going to get it through low energy, low engagement, and generally not being excited about the project. You stand a much better chance, almost always, of getting that buy-in if you're coming prepared, ready to talk about anything, asking questions, being engaged, and just generally providing a good level of service. It's no different than selling shoes. In this case, we're selling marketing experience and know-how.
Right.
But fundamentally, it's customer service 101.
Yeah, I agree. And I think I'm glad to hear that. I agree with you. I think we've seen
CEO is glad about the delivery.
No, not so much the delivery, but the change in the demands that are being put on marketing teams, and
yeah,
you know, I think there was a period of time for sure that you know, money was flowing, teams were big, vendor money was being thrown. I mean, certainly like the last, you know, through the COVID period, and even before though, like, you know, there was money was flowing, vendors were engaged, and a much lower sense of accountability, I think, in terms of overall results. So like when I think about it now, it's like, well, that's great to have somebody that you can actually rely on. People, hey, more than one probably starts with the people that are leading sales, like in our organization, you know, our revenue leader, great business relationship. We've got that down. You know, we've got strategists, we've got account leads. Maybe the odd time you meet, whether it's solutions engineering head Mark, or it's going to be some of the other management account leads or the management leads of their center of excellence that are also there. But, you know, what a better place to be to have a quote unquote vendor that is going to be there for a while and help you solve problems. By the way, that also helps them have success as a company, which is then self-fulfilling for you to continue to have success as a customer. If you're seeing constant firings and hirings and turnover from an agency perspective, I mean, again, there's no flywheel that agency's. No, I'm not making excuses for poor agencies out there that aren't getting the job done, or like what you said, that, hey, you're not stepping up and actually showing up. But what I am saying is that ultimately the goal of any marketing team should be to go drive value for the business. Yep. And if you're just throwing stuff over to an agency and not doing your part in developing an entire, and we've got another thing we can talk about in a sec, then I think you are doing your business a disservice, because now it's no different than, hey, I joined this company, we have Pardot, I want to put it in HubSpot. Great. You're going to spend 6 months. Well, it's not 6 months. Okay, whatever. Sure. I'd like to see it not be 6 months, unless you've got zero going on. Guess what? We're on a system. If we were to switch systems, that's not a trivial process. It's going to probably take 4 months easily to get that done properly, if not more. And it's everybody talk about that. So it's the same thing with switching agencies. We're going to wholesale switch. We're going to just keep wholesale switching. We're never going to work to build a bigger picture strategy and engagement. Then you are going to do your business a disservice.
I think from the agency side too, I think sometimes you can be guilty of looking too long-term or too big picture. Oh yeah, we're trying to get this like multi-year retainer deal.
Oh yeah.
And sometimes it's just like, honestly, just go do a good job with what they're asking you to do. If you do good enough, 9 times out of 10, the engagement's going to continue.
Yeah.
It would have to, if you really do a great job and you add a ton of value and they don't proceed with you as expected, that would be unique and few and far between. Mm-hmm. But sometimes it's like, well, we're thinking about the big thing, and then you're not thinking enough about the thing right now.
Yeah.
And, you know, you can't get to step 2 without doing step 1.
Okay.
So that's got to be the priority, I think, too, is just delivery. And you're right, like the expectations, going back to your point on an outsourced agency and consultant, it's a different expectation than if you're an internal employee. It just is. They're, by an hourly basis, they're paying more. They're paying for someone who has been there and done that and typically knows what to do, or at least has a pretty good sense of that. They're not hiring an agency saying, we think in 6 months they can start contributing. They probably are realistic around there is a ramp up period, but the bet is we're paying a premium for that ramp up to be a lot quicker.
Yeah. So in the realm of, you know, institutional knowledge and a lot like personality fit factor, relationship fit factor, right? So you're hiring an individual and or multiple people on marketing team to fulfill a function. And what we said on the last podcast when we were looking at, you know, the shifts and the downsizing and the things that have been occurring is that, you know, marketing is so dynamic and is so fraught with turnover and all this kind of stuff. It always has been, right? But even more so kind of now, that rarely do you really see, you know, we're hiring this individual and we assume this individual that we're hiring as our, you know, demand gen manager or demand gen specialist, they're going to be here for 20. Look, our business isn't going away. I even Goose Digital, like I don't have a plan where Goose Digital is not going to be here in 2 years or 4 years or 10. Like I don't have that plan. Now, maybe we're SaaS companies looking to exit. That's not what this is. We're talking about the lion's share of every other business. They're not thinking, oh, we're not going to be around in 2 years or 4 years or 5 years. So why are we hiring people and not giving them ideas for growth? Yeah, you're going to start here, but as we grow, we're going to put you in new roles. So like they think, oh, we're just plugging a hole. We're plugging we're plugging a demand gen specialist role. We need that. But it's like, well, actually, no, you're bringing somebody into your business, a career. They want to grow. They want to be here over time. Or did you sit down with them when you hired them and you said, look, this role is going to cap out. We really don't have any plan to spend more than $100K a year on paid media. That's about as good as this is going to be. So likely you're not going to be happy here for, you know, after a year and a half when you figure this out and or you realize you hate it, you'll probably be on to your next job. So it doesn't make sense to me. So you're probably going to be building up a team and building a relationship and not expecting overnight. So obviously agency versus internal, different story. I'm hiring a professional and a capability. But to the extent that we're building relationships and we want continuity, we want long-term institutional knowledge, we don't want disruption in our programs, right?
Yep.
I think that is what we are saying, is that should be, you should be leaning into that as a marketing leader looking to bring in an agency.
So I think on that too, the other thing is when you're thinking of a long-term engagement, a lot of it has to come down to like the ability for the agency to pivot and evolve. Because if we do a really great job for our client, then chances are we may not have to put as much focus on it next year. Then what? And I think as the client, when you're evaluating agencies, I think one of the critical questions that you should be asking agencies you're considering working with is show me examples of how you've evolved an account. Whether it's things like we did that and then we moved on, whether it's shifts in the client side business. Oh, now we have to make a pivot. It's no one's fault. It's just the landscape changed.
Yep.
So now what? And because I think all of the long-term engagements we have, and which we would define as multiple years, we're not doing the same things we were doing when we started.
Right.
Yeah, some of it's bigger or better, but some of it's just different for a variety of reasons. And I think you'd want to know that not only are you working with people that you like in an engagement model that seems to flow and seamlessly fits in with your business, but also do they have the ability to realign and pivot and ultimately change and evolve so that it meets the current offering? Because you don't want to hire an agency today, invest all this time into bringing them up, and then in 2 years, it's what you're doing is obsolete, and there's just no ability for them to pivot now and address the new market needs.
Yeah. I mean, I think that we could do a whole podcast on, you know, the benefits of choosing an agency that has multidisciplines and or, you know, flex engagement models or other types of agency capabilities that would allow you to make that pivot. But even if it wasn't so like hard pivot, like, oh, you know, we hired a marketing automation or elements of ops, and now we want to do website like that, you know, or video. Like, I think what you're saying is that no differently than if you had these people internally, which again, I mean, like this, we're not doing a podcast on the benefits of like hiring an agency, but let's just call it out. Hey, we thought this year was going to be heavy into email, or no, because we did it last year and we did heavy into demand, LinkedIn paid meet. So what did we have? We had a creative and a map resource internally that was handling a bunch of email, and we had somebody that really knew social network, paid media, and some remarketing, and that's what we had. And guess what? 2024 isn't that anymore. 2024, we're doing this and that and other strategies. Oh shoot, what do we do with these people? You know, are we we hired you to do this. Would you like to go build our website? Well, I don't really build websites. I was hired to be an automation. So yeah, I mean, we're not doing a podcast on the benefits of hiring an agency, but I think that is a big one. Now, what you're saying is, well, what's going to happen when those inevitable shifts occur? Is it going to be hey, well, I'll stop. We're cutting a new SOW. That's a change request. We're whoa. Or is it going to be, no, we actually have, that is part of how we do things. And not only can you make it happen from a commercials perspective, but the people that you're working with, to your point on fit factor, is that, yeah, and they can too. They can pivot just like you'd expect a strong internal marketing resource to pivot, right? So yeah, I like that a lot. We didn't talk about that at the begining of the podcast, so you threw that in. That was nice.
Unhinged.
Unplanned. What other things fall into the category of like relationships and fit factor?
I think some of it too is like, I was listening to Dave Gerhardt talk about this on his podcast, and he was sort of reflecting his time when he worked for HubSpot and then some other companies after Drift. And he was like, most of the time agencies didn't work out was actually my fault as the client. I wasn't clear enough with what the expectations were, or I didn't give them enough information to make what they were doing good as opposed to just okay. So I think there is some accountability on the client side to make sure like you're feeding the right information so that the agency can hopefully do the right thing with it. I do think though, like my personal perspective or bias skews to agencies really need to push to add value.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is there should never be a cop-out, but I think what he's saying, we heard this from one of our other accounts that had a consultant that was working with them that used to run all the agency relationships for Microsoft, right? And the part of the learning there was, and then the anecdote was 9 times out of 10 when there was an agency breakdown, they felt it was actually on the client side. That ultimately came down to, like you said, either, a lack of experience, understanding kind of what was being put forward and how it was being put forward, and communications, expectation, all that stuff. A lot of it that was interesting, right? Because it wasn't 6 out of 10. It was, but at the same time, like, we're not sitting here saying, oh, great, that means we can just sit back and wait for the information to come at us. That's not what we're saying at all. In fact, you should be a part of it by design should be a consultative fabric that you've put through the org to help tease a lot of that out.
Oh, right. Like, I think we're very close to 300 clients at Goose that we've worked with over the course of our life. I can think of maybe on less than one hand the number of clients that we did not have a good shot, if not very good shot, to be successful with. And that has nothing to do with the client side, whether it's like expectations and communications and all that stuff. It's like, we could have, if we had done what we normally do with the levels and standards that we would expect of ourselves, we had a very good shot to have a successful engagement.
Yeah. And that's why I said, when you talk about the accountability, where does it sit? And ultimately it sits with the client, right? Now, what's their role to the extent of enforcing that accountability or taking that accountability as it relates to like a failed agency engagement? Look, at the end of the day, you hired an agency, right, to deploy your plan. Now, if that agency you got into something, they oversold you, they had no real ability to do it, or there was just, they don't have the capabilities that you thought you had. You might be in a situation where you're asking for a refund, or there might just be a breach of contract, something there. But in all likelihood, what is the situation is that you as the marketing leader, decided that was the right thing to do, and you didn't have your side figured out on how to ensure that side of the equation made sense. Like if you decided to take, you wanted to change your own tires and put your own winter tires on, and then the thing flings off on the 401 and kills someone, like, they're going to be out. Why did you do that? Why didn't you take it to a mechanic that knew what they were? You made the decision to do that. Nobody forced you to change your own tires. And it's the same thing with the marketing leader. So I do think it's part of how do you go to the CEO and the president and the revenue leaders and say, hey, by the way, this didn't work out because the agency, they did not do a good job. It's like,
Yep.
that really, you better really have that nailed down if you're going to bring that forward, and be no different about. So it's a scapegoat. Yes. If you're saying, have agencies been, used as scapegoats for failed initiatives and failed strategies? Yes. 100%. Yeah.
But it's kind of like, I always, like, I think the analogy is like a coach in a sports team. Okay. It's like the client's the coach, but like the players or the agency still have to deliver.
Mm-hmm.
And if the agency is not sure, hey, I don't know if we're adding value, just calling that out. What could we be doing? Are they better aligning to what the outcomes and goals actually are?
Mm-hmm.
Are they asking those questions? Are they calling out, hey, like, I think based on those objectives, we could be doing something else that's more valuable, higher impact.
Right.
There are times definitely where the agency doesn't give themselves the best chance to succeed because of that.
Mm-hmm.
You veer away from process or asking the hard questions. So maybe another trait or characteristic of the people that you're working with on the agency side would be, are they honest? Are they straight shooters? Will they call something out when something needs to? And it's with tact is within the best, the intent for the best for the relationship and the actual outcomes and performance, right? So I think that's going to be really crucial too. So yeah, is it possible the agency does everything they can and still it wasn't a success? Yeah, but it's very rarely like that.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of times what probably the failures tend to be in, the overall go-to-market, really wasn't an execution of whatever was being put forward at that level. It was more, our business is trying to go sell X, Y, and Z, and we think it's this message, and this is the TAM, and as a result, we're going to go out to market, and then the whole thing flops. Not so much because it was poorly executed; it was just that at a high level, the market product message and fit was not 100% there.
I had a funny thing the other day. We're working with a large organization where marketing and sales they're not super aligned. It's not to say they're misaligned, but like they're just not close as departments. They're just a large organization, different geographies, different products within the portfolio or suite. And as part of the engagement, we're gonna be doing some ABM stuff with them. Actually, like a second round of ABM, totally different market, totally different product. And their product marketing team said, we'll do, like I said, I want to meet the sales team. I want to understand the sales cycle. What are the kinds of objections and challenges they have to work around?
Mm-hmm.
What goes on in the deals? And the marketing team asked me like, oh, do we need to be there? Like, we don't really need to be out. I was like, yeah, you do. You absolutely do. Like, one, perhaps you can add context and additional value to the meeting. And if two, if you can't, then it's like, then you should be here with me learning.
Yeah.
And they kind of wanted to split up into different meetings and recaps. And I was like, we can recap after if you want, but you got to be there. Find a way. I'll record it. We'll transcribe notes if you can't actually physically make the meeting, but like you got to be there because you got to absorb what's going on in these too, right? That speaks to like alignment and making sure that that strategy you're talking about isn't wrong from the get-go.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think we're treading into like a whole nother topic, which with two topics. One is, I think is interesting to go over some ABM stuff at some point. But I think the other topic you're kind of treading into is almost the lack of accountability when I'm hearing and responsibility that the internal marketing team has over the entire process. Like,
and it's not to knock the clients and stuff like that.
No.
What it is to say is like but
you can't. But I guess what I'm saying is that you can't. And I'll let you go on as the strategist, but you cannot outsource. Ultimately, you can't outsource accountability. You can't outsource the knowledge of what our business, like, you know what I mean? It's like, oh, I have no idea what the sales team's objections are or like that. It's like, no, you can't outsource that. That's, you can't. Like, you have to know that.
100%. But on the flip side, I'd say the same thing for the agency is like, you have to be also accountable as a strategist. You need to know how all of these pieces work so that you can give the best possible recommendations and strategy.
Yeah.
And whether the client marketing team knows that or not, I need to get that information from someone.
Right.
And it's not a good enough excuse for me to say, well, the strategy was botched, but in fairness to me, I didn't talk to sales.
Yeah.
No client's going to allow for that, and your results will suffer.
Yeah.
And we are definitely in the results-based or results-oriented business.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just the kind of like the level I think right now you need to be at as far as agency accountability and doing the right thing. In some cases, like the client says, we want you to meet sales. Mm-hmm. And in other cases, I'm the one sort of
pushing in,
knocking the door down to say like, we need this, and I'm happy to explain why, it's going to be helpful. And I'll even do that on my dollar if I have to, because we just need to know that information. So one way or another, I just have to understand the full sales process, because I don't want to put out a half-baked strategy.
Yeah. And you want to be able to defend it. All right. I think that's pretty good. I think we're pretty good on that one. This was a really good, I guess, send off to the Studio 2, Studio B.
Talk about a cliffhanger.
Studio B. So the next one will be Studio C. Technically Studio C. So we're going to do that.
It sounds like we have, more unhinged episodes to come, but also perhaps a hinged, ABM, reflections of ABM in 2024. I like that. So, hinged or regular.
And maybe a real edgy one, like you can't outsource accountability. Maybe that one. Ooh, that'll get some attention. Okay. That'll be clickbaity.
Straight fire. Is that what they say now?
Yeah. Oh, is that what they say? I don't know. All right. Good stuff. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Till next time.
Peace.